Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, Season 2, Episode 2, All That Glitters. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happened in the episode. So in this episode, Hercules is making horseshoes when Salomonius comes in and asks if he can purchase a horseshoe for luck because he's going to go visit the new gambling palace in Midas's kingdom. And Hercules finds this suspicious because he knew Midas in the past and helped him to overcome his gift. And opening a gambling palace did not seem like something that he would do necessarily, so he decides to go with Salomonius. On their way there, they run into a couple of orphans who are trying to pick apples in an orchard and are almost killed by the guards, which are called Iron Heads. And after that, Hercules really gets the vibe that something has to be wrong because the Midas he knew was not the type of person who would have guards that acted thuggishly and tried to kill children. And so they make it to the gambling palace where it turns out the king is basically just the opening attraction, sitting on his throne, shaking people's hands as they enter the gambling den, um, or gambling palace is what they call it. And then so Midas greets Hercules as an old friend, tries to go show him to his partners. His partners basically dismiss him and, aren't showing him any of the respect that a king should be shown. And Midas is literally sent back to his throne and told he's not allowed to leave until his shift is done. And Hercules then meets the owner and her partner bodyguard, Voluptua and Sigalis, and immediately, of course, has a bad impression of them because they are sleazy. And then when he leaves after visiting them, Voluptua says that she wants him because he'd be a good attraction, and he notices that Flaxen, who is the princess of this kingdom, is provocatively dancing and performing at this casino, yet another sign that the royal authority is pretty much absolutely gone at this point. And then Hercules is basically tricked because when he goes to see Flaxen again, Sigalis, who wanted to marry her, she says no, he hits her. Hercules sees her face, goes and fights against Sigalis, which is basically set up, and he finds out that the customers were actually betting on the fight because he was led to the stage to do that fight. There's also another scene where the orphan children that he had saved earlier are basically forced to walk a small plank with blades underneath should they fall, and everybody is betting on which one of them is going to fall, either red or blue, and Hercules, of course, saves red when red falls. And basically, things are not right in this kingdom. Hercules is going around trying to stop that. Voluptua and Sigalis, they worship Hera, who gives them a knife that's supposed to be able to even kill Hercules. When Midas does try to stand up for himself and his kingdom with Hercules' help, he ends up being imprisoned and beaten up by his partners, once again showing that the authority of the king is no longer there. And then in order to force Hercules to basically play along with them and make them some money, Voluptua and Sigalis put the king and his daughter in a contraption that basically will kill one or both of them, depending on their actions. And Hercules is winning of fights, and he's set up to basically fight a bunch of different fighters before the time runs out in order to save them. However, luckily Salomonius is there, and while he has been having a great time gambling in the gambling palace while Hercules has been trying to figure all this stuff out, he does get Hercules a sharp implement, which Hercules is then able to utilize to free Midas and his daughter. He beats up everyone that needs beating up, And then in the end, Midas decides to fully close down the gambling palace, return to farming, and everybody in all the citizens are forgiven their debts, returning to their farming traditions, and the only peoples whose debts still apply are they feel indebted to Hercules who saved them, and then those who bet against Hercules will have to work off their debt by hard labor in the fields, and then we see Sigalis pulling a plow while Voluptua is forced to push the plow, showing that they, of course, are the ones who bet against Hercules, who is always a sure bet, according to Midas. And basically, all's well that ends well. So now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, we will now rank the episode. As always, we'll rank first on the mostly objective ranking list, which is mostly objective because, well, emotion doesn't come into play, bias and judgment do still apply. And then the personal ranking list, which is more based on the entertainment value and emotional response to the episode. So first off, we have our single episode supporting character introductions, which we have Flaxen, the princess, Voluptua, King Midas, and Sigalis. That's 4 points. That was all that was positive. And then we have the negative points. Obviously, we have a character regression, which is a king having lost all of their power. And then the negative messaging or behaviors. Obviously, gambling can lead to devastating consequences if it's not done smartly. For example, you could earn a year's salary as easily as you lose a year's salary, as is the example given in the episode itself. We then, of course, have child endangerment with the pole stunt, and especially the fact that they purposely put blades underneath to kill whichever child fell off. Not good, -2 points. And then we have violence against the weak. For example, Sigalis hitting Flaxen, violence against women, not a great thing, especially since she didn't do anything other than reject him because he's undesirable. So that was -2 points. And that does put us in the negative. And because we are in the negative and the lowest score possible is a 1, that does make this a 1 out of 10 episode, objectively. And so we went from King of Thieves at a high point in episode 1 all the way to a very low point in episode 2, All That Glitters. And my personal opinion is very much still in line with the objective ranking. King of Thieves was a very good episode. Really enjoyed it. Almost gave it a 10, but only gave it a 9. This episode, honestly, I didn't really enjoy it. However, I did find a couple of redeeming things in it. Number one, I thought that King Midas seemed like a very sweet old man and was just kind of fumbling, maybe due to his old age, but he seemed really nice. And when Hercules, kind of pointed out that, hey, I know you think that this is good and you did it for a good reason to help your people because, you had droughts and there was flooding before that and a bunch of natural disasters that had caused trouble for the kingdom. But with the gambling palace, that brings in a lot of money. The citizens are still able to eat even in drought or flood because they're getting their salaries for something other than farming. However, obviously, the corruption underneath everything with Voluptua and Sigalis was pointed out, and once he realized that, he did try to put things right. Unfortunately, by then he had lost so much of his power and the respect that, he at first failed, but luckily Hercules was there to save the day. But I did like Midas as a character. I thought he seemed like a very sweet old man who was just trying to do the right thing and got scammed. And then, of course, Salomonius had some comedic moments. He was chased around by a bearded lady pretty much the entire time, and he only really listened to what she had to say after she shaved her beard. And it turns out she was chasing him not out of interest in him, but because she had a very good business idea. So he ends up, when she shaves her beard at the end of the episode, running off with her to start a business. So works out for him, but that was pretty funny. And I did like the setting. I thought like the whole casino vibe was pretty unique as compared to a lot of the other episodes. And I did think that it did look pretty cool. They had a lot of like gymnastics acts, they had cool costuming. It was visually entertaining. Even some of the games, how they reimagined casino games in like what would ancient people have done for gambling games. And I thought that also looked pretty cool. So there were redeeming qualities. However, the overall plot and storyline, I just wasn't a fan of, and it just didn't really hold my interest. And it also felt kind of depressing and frustrating to watch, especially since I did not like the villains and I did like Midas and I did feel so bad for him. Because like I said, like it's like when your grandparents get scammed and you're like, oh, if only someone younger had been there to like let them know this is a scam, don't give your money to it. It gave those types of vibes. Like this poor old man got scammed and nobody was there to stop him ahead of time, or he didn't listen to the people who tried to stop him ahead of time, and it just ended up, well, it's a good thing Hercules came because it ended well, but because it did have those few redeeming qualities, I decided to give it a whole 2 out of 10 instead of a 1 out of 10. Um, out of consideration for there being at least a couple of redeemable things, but because the main meat of the episode just wasn't it for me, a 2 was really all I could do. And so The King of Thieves is still in first, and All That Glitters is in second. Which now brings us to the series ranking so far. On our mostly objective ranking, Season 1 ended with 71.54%, and Season 2 has 11 out of 240 so far. Personal ranking side, 73.85% for Season 1, and Season 2 so far, also at 11 out of 240. But with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, Season 2, Episode 2, All That Glitters. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.